Hey guys, DBWhatIfs here. I wanted to do a crossover what if, but I couldn't decide if it should be Luffy in Dragon Ball or Goku in One Piece. So I decided that it may be more interesting if Goku was in One Piece. Most people have these what if types where Goku gets nerfed very hard, but I am not a huge fan of that. I'd much rather it be the same story but a different type of Earth. There would still be a planet Vegeta, and there would still be Saiyans, Emperor Frieza, Raditz, all that. But the only thing different is the Earth Goku is sent to. It's Earth, but just not Dragon Ball's Earth, but One Piece's Earth. So, Goku would still be sent to Earth by Bardock and Gine, and Goku would land on Earth, but he'd land on the island with Fuchsia Village, which is quite the feat if you consider how much of the One Piece world is water. But if you think that village name is familiar, you'd be correct. That's the island Luffy was born on. And if you're worried about Goku becoming a great ape and destroying Fuchsia Village, don't worry. I changed Fuchsia Village to be very foggy at night, preventing sight of the full moon. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get this what if started. It was a quiet night in Fuchsia Village when suddenly a loud bang filled the air and the ground began to shake. Villagers gathered where the sound had come from. There was a giant crater, and in that crater was a Saiyan space pod. An old man whose name is Whoopslap is the mayor of Fuchsia Village. He walks up to the crowd, slowly pushing himself along with his cane. But he finally manages to get to the front of the mass of people and shouts out, "Everyone, keep away! As mayor, I will investigate this matter personally." Whoopslap poked the space pod with his cane as it opened slowly, revealing a young boy in strange clothing, crying hysterically. A woman then walked over to the boy as Whoopslap yelled out, "Makino!" Makino picked up the crying boy and began to rock him slightly. The boy's crying ceased as the crowd began to quietly clap for Makino's bravery over a strange situation. Makino brought the boy back to her bar, and Whoopslap came as well. Whoopslap told Makino, "Makino, we don't know where this boy came from. He probably came from the Grand Line, or dropped from the sky." Makino changed the boy out of his clothes and froze before noticing the boy's tail and said, "Some sort of monkey child?" Makino then changed the boy into something more comfortable. Whoopslap then said, "This boy is strange enough as is. We don't need this kind of weirdness in the village, Makino." Makino laughed and said, "So what are you suggesting? Give the baby to the sea?" Whoopslap quieted down before saying, "No. All I'm saying is that maybe we should have left him be for a bit until whoever or whatever dropped him off came back for him." Makino shook her head and said, "It's better if we took him inside. He could catch a cold. By the looks of him, he's about 3 years old, I think." Whoopslap sighed, then said, "So, for now, what do we call the little guy?" Makino thought it over for a bit before settling on the name Goku. As the days passed, Goku had proven to be a rambunctious child, climbing on buildings, throwing rocks at people, when suddenly one day Goku had climbed the windmill and a big gust of wind blew him off, causing Goku to land on his head. A villager rushed into Makino's bar and said, "Makino, come quick! It's Goku! He fell from a windmill." Makino rushed into the village square where villagers had surrounded the unconscious Goku. Makino took Goku back inside the bar and began nursing him back to help. After a couple of days, Goku had woken up, and from then on, he was a complete opposite of how he used to be: kind, caring, helpful. That's because his memory had been erased entirely. It's as if he became a new person altogether. 4 years had passed, and in that time, Goku had found pleasure in punching training dummies and challenging the men to an arm wrestling competition to which he'd win about half the time. Suddenly, a tall man wearing a suit dropped off a boy and said, "Makino, I apologize. Do you think you could watch over my grandson Luffy? He needs a place to stay, and Fuchsia Village, the safest place I can think of. It's only fair to keep him in his hometown with folks that know and love him." Makino clasped her hands together and said, "Of course. I will say, though, there is another boy that I am currently watching." Almost as if on cue, Goku walks up and says, "You have funny hair, haha." Luffy yelled back, "What did you say? At least my hair isn't sticking up in every direction." Goku laughs and says, "You got me there. Haha, my name is Goku. What's yours?" Luffy, still pouting somewhat, says, "Luffy." Goku smiles and says, A funny name too, ha ha ha. Luffy balls up his fist and says, "You want to fight?" Goku smiles and says, "Yeah, I know a great spot we can spar at." Makino then says, "Boys, please be careful." Luffy waves off to Garp and Makino as he yells out, "No promises." Garp then said, "I'll take him back to Mount Kalubo. Just figured he'd stay here for a bit." Goku and Luffy then got into their fighting poses. Goku charged at Luffy, and after a couple of punches, Luffy fell over. Luffy picked himself up again and started punching at Goku. Goku easily dodged Luffy's barrage of attacks and tripped Luffy with his tail. "Haha," Goku said. Luffy gritted his teeth, then yelled, "Shut up!" Luffy then headbutts Goku in the jaw. Goku held his jaw and said, "Ow! That was a good move, but look out for my double punch attack." They then sparred until they both laid on the ground out of breath. Luffy had a ton more welts and bruises on him compared to Goku, but Goku said, "You're very strong." Luffy, still out of breath, says, "Thank you. So are you." The two then became inseparable. A few months later, a pirate ship came to shore. A red-haired man suddenly came up to shore with his crew. Luffy asked, "Who's that guy?" Goku then said, "That's Shanks and the red-hair pirates. They come by here to hang out at Mariko's bar. They're pretty nice considering they're pirates." Luffy looked astonished at them. Eventually, Luffy, Goku, and the red-hair pirates form a strong bond. One time, Luffy, Goku, and Shanks were all hanging out on Shanks' ship as Luffy asked, Hey Shanks, can I join your crew?" Goku yells out, "Yeah, me too." Shanks laughs before saying, "You two wouldn't last a day out at sea besides. I only take really strong guys for my crew." Shanks and his crew laughed as Luffy pouted. Luffy then had an idea. Luffy climbed up to the ship's crownest before taking a dagger out and yelled out, "Hey Shanks, look at how manly I can be." Goku looked up towards Luffy, as did everyone else. Luffy then jammed the dagger into his cheek. Shanks quickly jumped up there and stopped Luffy. Everyone gathered back into Makino's bar as Shanks patched Luffy up with a band-aid. Goku sat next to Luffy and said, "That was pretty crazy. Why did you do that?" Shanks said, "More like foolish." Luffy pouted, then said, "I was showing you that I could be really strong." Shanks laughs, then says, "You gotta be older too, haha." Suddenly, a tall mountain bandit had entered the bar with his bandit buddies. Goku and Luffy looked onwards at the bandits as the bar quieted down. The man then said, "Hey, you recognize me surely. I'm Higuna, Mountain Bandit. Give us some drinks." Makino bowed her head slightly and said, "I apologize, sir, but we are all out of drinks." Higuna's eyes narrowed at Makino. Higuna then says, "Don't you know who I am?" Higuna, "I have a bounty of 8 million. I've ended the lives of 57 people." Shanks then lifted a hand up and said, "Hey, sorry about that. My crew and I must have drank the place dry. Here, we haven't drank this one yet, take it. It's yours." Higuna then slashed the bottle of ale with a sword. Shanks then said, "Oh no, look at this mess on the floor. Makino, do you have a mop?" Makino, who was almost in a trance watching the scene unfold, walked over to the closet and brought back a mop. Shanks bent down to clean it up, but Higuna put his foot on Shanks' head and said, "You like to clean, huh, boy? Haha." Higuna then spit on Shanks as he walked away laughing with his mountain bandit buddies. Shanks sat on the floor, spat on, and kicked over. Shanks slowly began to smile, then laugh along with his whole crew in the bar. A crew member said, "He got you good, boss. Ha ha ha." Luffy then yelled out, "Are you kidding me? That guy totally made fun of you and you guys are all just laughing? How could you laugh over something like that? You're pirates, aren't you?" Goku walked over to Luffy and put a hand on his shoulder and said, "We can take that guy, can't we?" Luffy yelled out, "Yeah." Shanks quieted them down quickly and said, "Look, this is how I know you aren't ready to join my crew. Either one of you." Luffy pouted before looking on the counter and seeing a box. Luffy opened it and saw a fruit inside the box. Without hesitation, Luffy began eating the entire fruit. Shanks laughed and said, "You shouldn't eat out of frustration, Luffy, haha." Luffy then said, with a mouthful, "Shut up." Goku looked over and asked, "Whoa, where'd you get the fruit?" Shanks then quickly glances over at Luffy and notices Luffy ate the fruit that was on the counter in a box. Shanks quickly yelled out, "No! You didn't just eat that fruit, did you?" Goku laughed and said, "Yep. The whole thing, haha." Shanks then quickly picked Luffy up by his ankles and began dangling him up and down, yelling out, "Spit it out! I mean it! Every last bit! Spit it out now!" Suddenly, Luffy's head falls against the ground while Shanks is still holding onto Luffy's ankles. The whole bar became silent as Luffy's body bounced back up. Luffy then asked, "What just happened?" Goku yelled out, "You just stretched like a spring man." Shanks yelled out, "You just ate a devil fruit, Luffy. In exchange for odd powers, you lose your ability to swim for the rest of your life." Luffy yelled out, "What?" Goku's jaw dropped as Makino covered her mouth with her hand. Shanks set Luffy down and Luffy almost fell over, realizing his body was in fact like rubber. Goku exclaimed, "Whoa, cool!" Luffy then yelled out, "How did this happen?" Shanks then yelled out, "Were you listening? It's because you ate the fruit, you dumbass." And that is where I will be leaving it off for now. So, this one is very different for me for sure. I am a huge fan of Dragon Ball and One Piece, so it was a little tricky for me to incorporate Goku into the village without outshining Luffy's original story. I wanted to make part 1 the introduction to Goku and Luffy. Please let me know what you think in the comments and what I can do to make things more interesting. For now, please comment, and if you made it this far, you may as well subscribe. I'll be sure to catch you in the next one. Until then, take it easy.